Thank you very much. Let me begin by thank you, Mr. Qureshi, and welcome all good colleagues. Michael, I think we know each other a little bit. It's good to see you again, and also Peter Turchikianov. It's good to see you. And I think I will accept Daoud Malay's, as a speaker in this, because I have a commitment to gender participation. I'm a gender champion here in Geneva, so I accept it only if he can go by Malays, not Daoud. So, but anyways, it's good to be here, and I'll just begin with a disclaimer that the views, as you say, that the views here are not represented on your foundation. Similarly, this is not my official governmental view of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As a concerned Afghan citizen, and also as a semi-scholar of that region, I have had, a book recently on neutrality of Afghanistan and the region. That's my PhD dissertation, and I have my own views of South and Central Asia and the whole of Afghanistan and its regions. So these are probably my academic ideas, not what Afghanistan foreign policy is. So with this, I will, as I mentioned also earlier, that my knowledge of terrorism, academic knowledge, is probably rudimentary, although I lived through terrorism in South Asia. I remember when Dr. Najibullah fell. I remember when he was hanged at 9/11. All of these things are vivid. And I've always been in Afghanistan, grown up there and worked, and just went out to study. So this is who I am. So actually I felt terrorism with my skin and bone and everything. But then when you bring the ideas of trajectories of terrorism and the whole thing, I think I will perhaps listen to the other participants and to enrich my own understanding of what do you mean by trajectories of terrorism in South Asia, and how the US departure of the remaining 2,500 US forces will have an impact or not on that. But in any case, I wanted to discuss more on diplomatic and geopolitical side of it. Probably, it opens up the thing, and then maybe that nicely the terrorism dynamic or discussion will fit in it. I have 2-3 slides, but I don't know if I can share it. I will try to see if I can do this share screen. I don't know how it will go. Let me see. If I can do, I'll try, but if I couldn't, then I will leave it. Let me see. Share. This is working, no?
Yes, you are working.
It's great. So it seems it's okay. So this is what it is, and for your viewers, so this is how Afghanistan, where it is, and for us, Afghanistan is, yes, it's a member of the SARC, but this is the farthest north of South Asia. And I would say, that let's say Afghanistan is not part of one region. We are member of SARC, yes, that's true. But Afghanistan is, according to many studies, at least in three regions of the world. And even until 2004, Afghanistan was in one department, in State Department, then later on it was brought into the other one. Some countries like Australia, half of it is in South Asia, the other half is still in Central Asia. So that's how it is. And some people are considering it part of the extended Middle East, or if you look at it from West Asia point of view. So I think that explains a lot about Afghanistan. And I think that brings the anecdote of a Japanese and an American diplomats, 2 young diplomats who were together somewhere in a diplomacy course. So the American diplomats asked the Japanese that, what's your foreign policy? What's the foreign policy of Japan? The major principles. The Japanese diplomat replies that an archipelago. So the American guy asked him, no, I didn't ask about the geography of your country. I'm talking about, your foreign policy. He said, no, I'm also talking about my foreign policy, and that's an archipelago. And for us, this is how it is. Afghanistan, a landlocked country, a previously buffer state, later on a neutral state, and later on, an isolator, and now hopefully an aggregator of the 3 main regional security complexes in that part of the world. And that's, I think that explains a lot. I think there are books could be written about just, this sentence, that Afghanistan and its geography, and it's, I think it's somehow haunted by its geography, and whatever we tried since 2002 to change this from a liability into an asset, I think the jury is still very much open, but I'm expecting that, with these new dynamics of Central Asia opening and, things are changing around Afghanistan, hopefully this geography will turn back to an asset, which it was, in the past. Hundreds and thousands of years back, it was what we call it now, the heart of Asia. So, but specifically about South Asia, this first thing, that sentence is something that is a response to my question by a 2-star, I think it was 2-star, a 3-star former US general who was giving us a lecture in Asia Pacific College of Diplomacy in 2010. He was a young diplomat there for training. So I asked this gentleman, because he was talking about both ways, and he was talking about Pakistan very passionately, and then in the next lecture he spoke about India as if there was no Pakistan. So I asked him, as a curious, Afghan who's always in the middle of this India, Pakistan, and the other problems. So I asked him, how do we explain these two things? So he told me, he gave me this answer, and it's, stuck in my mind. He told me India is our natural ally, but Pakistan is our traditional ally. So for me as a young diplomat, it was very difficult to digest, these two things. But slowly, after 10 years, slowly I can, make a little bit sense of what he meant. Although, this natural and traditional could change too. So again, coming back to Afghanistan, US's approach toward Afghanistan traditionally has been seen as sort of, from a UK lens. In the research that I did, I think the first Afghan official who went to the United States, it was 1921. It was Mohammad Wali Khan Darwazi, who was our first, ambassador at large during Amanullah Khan, and he tried to meet President Harding and to tell that, like, it's still the same thing. I think he was just trying to explore economic opportunities and invite United States to come and to invest in Afghanistan mines and minerals, 1921. But what he was told was that, look, thank you for coming here and good to see you, but I think you have to go to London, talk to them. We are not very much interested in where you are, and we look at this from the British India lens. Then in the 1940s, there was some attempts by our government to reach out and to see if we can basically create a direct connection. Didn't work very much, and 1950s, 55 particularly, was probably the last major attempt by an Afghan government, by Prime Minister Dawood Khan and also Shah Mahmud Khan and the others, to solicit US supports in terms of economic development, but also in terms of military support in that part of the world. But then again, they were not received the way that they were expecting. So that's how Afghanistan, traditionally in Afghanistan's foreign policy, if you look at the United States, this is how it's seen. And then later on, of course, in the late 50s and the 60s, United States came in with a number of development projects. But then at that time, there was an understanding of between these two superpowers that United States will work and invest in the southern part of Afghanistan, especially around the Helmand Valley, and the Soviet Union will focus on the northern part of Afghanistan. I think this is, some analysts can argue that when the Soviet Union start investing in Jalalabad, and they had a farm, there is an agricultural farm there, this was when it was seen as encroaching into another basically sphere of influence, and from there they eavesdropped, and I think this was when this U2 of 1962, I think, happened, and which was the first incident, and I think the others could allude to that part too. So I think that's what it was between Afghanistan and United States. Of course, fast forward in the 1980s, when the United States came in to support the Pakistan and the others in supporting the Afghan Mujahideen, and the rest of them is, I think, contemporary history and all of us we know about. So that was the relationship between Afghanistan and the United States. But Afghanistan itself traditionally, as I said, played the role of a buffer state. The Afghanistan that we know today with this geography and with this name, created as a buffer state. And just it was a few days back, I'm sure some of you have noticed, probably Dawood, that the Foreign Ministry of Russia, they had a tweet where somehow maybe the mistake or whatever, they made some small part of that Wakhan corridor, which connects Afghanistan to China, was deleted in the map because probably that picture was not a very accurate one. And that created a huge fury in Afghanistan. Everybody was saying that, look, this is probably a plot that Russia wants to connect Pakistan to Tajikistan or something like this. But the reality is that that part itself was an agreement where the Soviet, at that time, the Tsarist Russia agreed to extend or to give that part to Amir of Afghanistan, the British Empire, and even to give some subsidy for Abdurrahman Khan to keep that part. So the Soviet, at that time, the Russian, Tsarist Russia and British India, the borders could not collide with each other. So that's how, Afghanistan's traditional role was as a buffer state. Not only one buffer, there were two buffers. One buffer was this Fatah area and the other buffer was Afghanistan. And normally, according to the literature, when the buffer situation or the buffer context is no more there, those countries which are buffer naturally change into neutral countries. And this is what happened to us. In 1919, in the First World War, Afghanistan was officially a neutral country, announced its neutrality, of course, with the little bit of coaxing and push by the King George of United Kingdom. But somehow we kept our neutrality, and even in the Second World War, we were a neutral country. So that sort of, from buffer to neutral is a traditional thing which we inherited and couldn't do much about it, because once in the 1920s, when we started moving toward other countries in Europe, the consequence was what we saw. And every time Afghanistan is out of balance, its foreign policy, then something or the other invasion happens. So I think having a balanced foreign policy is always part of our, let's say, diplomatic choice. But then Afghanistan became an insulator. It's an insulator, it's insulating many regions. I think this literature of regions and powers by Barry Buzan and the others, it's very nicely fits Afghanistan, that it plays an insulator role and trying to observe the shocks of these three regions: Central Asia, which is Russia and China, Shanghai Cooperation, West Asia, Central or Middle East, where there are lots of other players, Iran being one of the major players there, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the others, and Israel. And then in the South, India and Pakistan as major players of the South regional South Asia regional security complex. And Afghanistan is always in the middle, and each player, major players in all these three regions can do their, part of their games within Afghanistan without really affecting the balance of power within their own region. Although Middle East is out of sync with this theory, it's not there anymore. So the invasion of Afghanistan by Soviet Union, I think, gave Pakistan a golden opportunity. I think it was I think it was a crisis, but they turned it to an opportunity easily in terms of defense, diplomacy, and development. Their cooperation with the United States, with NATO, the way they led the OIC into removing the recognition of Afghanistan as an OIC member, their relationship with Japan and the others. And actually it was a boon economically and diplomatically and everything for Pakistan. And at the same time, their military regime could survive because of the way that they hosted. I think it changed the whole trajectory of Afghanistan's place in whatever it is, South or Central Asia. Somehow it was the first time that we depended on this new state of Pakistan, where we saw it, as what we call as a sixth finger after the Second World War. But we were always trying to work diplomatically to solve our issues. But suddenly, our people, our mujahideen at that time, our Islamic parties, they went to Pakistan, and that was the best opportunity for Pakistan. So, and then from there, the whole story of what we call it today, terrorism, I think is started. And I'm sure the others will definitely discuss about it in very much details on how this, terrorism as a relative phenomena is now becoming, the terrorists of the past were always part of this group which were fighting the government in Kabul at that time. They were all clubbed together as freedom fighters, but then the different groups split it. Bin Laden and Taliban and the others stood on one side, and some moderate mujahideen, start fighting against them. And what we see today is, as I think, the remaining of that. But the last point is, the idea is that Afghanistan of 21st century, I think this is what we are, in the past 15 years in the foreign ministry and all of Afghanistan government, we are trying to push that can Afghanistan's position change from liability into an asset? Can this insulator change to an aggregator, bringing all these regions together, mostly economically? So again, to today, I wanted to just discuss what's happening today. I'm sure people are interested in this. My belief is that Pakistan turned around this diplomatic fortune and changed again, once again in the matter of 30 years. I think it was 40 years back that their fortune changed. And again, not to the same extent, but relatively, Taliban were a liability to Pakistan even 3-4 years back, but now somehow it changed to an asset for them. It gives them diplomatic leverage. It was 2017 when President Trump tweeted something, and it was 2018 that he tweeted another tweet, which completely were, of course, two different things. Of course, we could expect that from President Trump, but somehow it shows that, Pakistan's, in that sense, resilience in terms of their support for this group and then turning it around. So maybe the others can explain it to me that why they are capable of doing this. But what we know, it's short term. It's not, they don't have basically the monopoly of the diplomatic dynamics in the region, Afghanistan, the way they had it in the 1990s. Today we have Iran, we have Central Asia, Russia, we have United States and India together. And of course, there is a Chinese factor too. So what happened to this dynamic? So where is India in this? I think India's domestic issues since 2016 has preoccupied India very much. I don't know if it is a side effect of the domestic politics or it's intentional, although I work very closely with Indian foreign policy and I studied there for some time. I claimed to some time that I knew India very well, but recently I'm very confused because of, I believe is that strategically, the people who were working around the Vajpayee area in the 1990s and early 2000s, so these were the people that they were strategically well versed in what's happening in Afghanistan. I think this group is no more there. Congress left and the new group which came in, of course, there are a few people who know Afghanistan very well, but again, I think that connection is lost and the kind of, strategic confusion that India created for itself, it seems that it's coming to bite it. So that's my understanding of it. Unlike Pakistan, because Pakistan simultaneously invests, in many quarters, and that's why it's able to keep its balance. But of course, you cannot equate the two countries when it comes to Afghanistan, given, the border relations and also direct dependence of millions of Afghans on Pakistani business, commerce, and even Taliban, safe havens. So then again, in terms of this dynamic, they were messaging. Recently, you see that their diplomatic messages are different. There were these two new prime ministers in India and Pakistan. Somehow, the relationship were, of course, very personal, both of them. But the messages are turning. The Pakistan's at least, in matter of since this Kashmir issue, have been able to turn the table to some extent diplomatically. Of course, it was not very successful, but somehow they are taking the initiative of being, pro-human rights and tolerance. They're talking of the religious tolerance, all of this. So that's I think that's another dynamic in here, and you can see less of terrorism right now. So Pakistan somehow managed, since Imran Khan has come, to put a lid on Pakistan being the base of terrorism. And of course, the biggest terrorist group was Taliban. They turned that to a partner of the United States to sign an agreement with them. I think that somehow they managed to do this. Again, I would be very interested to listen to the other speakers to see how that happened, because diplomatically it takes a lot of time. I think it was probably ISI who did it. So again, the expectations are that the democratic administration will have a different approach vis-a-vis India and Pakistan. I think it will be mostly in favor of Pakistan, it seems, but again, you have to wait and see, because the United States relationship with China will be a factor in this mix. Turkey's role is important. Now Turkey is taking over an important role there, or given by United States, and that Turkey-Pakistan connection, Pakistan-Sri Lanka connection, these are again positive developments for Pakistan, while Myanmar on the other hand is a negative development for India. So what happens if there is this, what they call it right now, this Khalilzad plan, if that succeeds, and then you can have Taliban within this system strongly, something like in a best scenario, something like an Hezbollah, where they are part of the government, but also they keep part of their paramilitaries there. I think Pakistan could have a very easy access and a plausibly deniable access to land, and also to hardline and battle-hardened Talibans across the Durand line. I think that's not the same as it was in 1998 when the Air India was hijacked from Nepal and brought into Kandahar, but probably to a lesser extent. So it is a difficult thing, because there will be some level of legitimacy, some layers of legitimacy to the groups, the terrorist groups, where Pakistan could have access from if the peace, the same way that they are working on it. If, of course, all the Taliban forces could demobilize, or the one that wanted to join could join the Afghanistan National Security Forces, they will become a normal political player, party within the system. We have a number of parties or coalitions. That's a different thing. But the way it's going right now, the way that they are becoming a 50% shareholder basically in these drafts which are going around. So that way, I think the trajectory, whatever trajectory you'll call it, will be a much more difficult one to contain or to fight with. So it will be basically state sponsored to some extent. And I think that has been one of the major worries of India, even when Hizb Islami joined the peace process. I had a conversation, of course, was Africa says no more Africa. I think that they were worried that from within the system, people of connection who have very strong connection to Hizb Islami could jeopardize Afghanistan and India's relationship from within the system itself. I think that's another thing which could happen even in a larger scale, because Hizb Islami, of course, did not have that much of military clout. Even politically, they were divided, many groups. Some of them were moderates, and they understood how to work within the government. But I think with Taliban coming in, that will take a long time. So with this, I will stop here. I don't know how long I have, but this is my general overview of the geopolitics and diplomatic dynamics of US with possible withdrawal from Afghanistan. Thank you.